Marcus grabbed the wrong child from school pickup, a billionaire's daughter. When the terrifying mother threatened to destroy his life, he expected revenge. Instead, she offered him a dream job, a new home, and hope. Sometimes the worst mistakes lead to the most beautiful beginnings. Before watching full story, comment below from here you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. The rain hammered against the school windows as Marcus Chen stood in the crowded pickup area, squinting through the chaos. His phone buzzed relentlessly with work messages, his boss demanding answers about the delayed construction project, clients threatening to pull contracts, bills piling up at home. Single parenthood meant juggling 1,000 things at once, and today felt like everything was crashing down around him. His ex-wife Sarah had taken half of everything in the divorce, including his confidence. Now he worked double shifts at the construction company just to keep their small apartment and pay for Emma's school supplies. Every day was a battle between being the father Emma deserved and earning enough money to survive. "Emma," he called out, spotting a small figure in a bright yellow raincoat near the school entrance. The child looked up with big, curious eyes, and Marcus quickly ushered her toward his beat-up Honda Civic. "Come on, sweetheart, let's get you home before this storm gets any worse." The little girl seemed quieter than usual, but Emma had been acting strange lately since the divorce papers were finalized. Marcus figured she was still processing everything: the new apartment, the different schedule, Daddy working more hours. He helped her into the worn car seat, noticing she seemed smaller somehow, but dismissed it as his exhausted imagination. Traffic was brutal in the storm. Marcus drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, thinking about the presentation he still needed to finish tonight, the groceries he couldn't afford to buy, the phone call from Emma's teacher about her grades slipping. Being a single dad was like walking a tightrope blindfolded. Halfway home, stuck at a red light, the child finally spoke in a soft, polite voice that made Marcus's blood freeze. "Excuse me, mister, but I think there might be a mistake." Marcus's heart stopped. He whipped around to look at the child in his back seat, really look at her for the first time. Different eyes, hazel instead of brown. Different nose. Different everything. This wasn't Emma. This wasn't his daughter. Panic shot through him like lightning. "Oh God, oh no, oh no." Marcus pulled over immediately, his hands shaking so violently he could barely grip the steering wheel. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Sophie Martinez," the little girl said with remarkable composure for a 6-year-old. "I was waiting for my nanny Maria, but she didn't come today. You seemed really nice and worried, so I didn't want to make you more upset." Marcus felt like he was drowning. He'd kidnapped someone's child. Accidentally, but who would believe that? His phone started ringing, unknown number with a local area code. "Hello?" he answered with trembling fingers. "You have my daughter." The voice was ice-cold, controlled, and absolutely terrifying. It was a woman's voice, but it carried the weight of someone used to commanding boardrooms and crushing enemies. "And you have exactly 15 minutes to bring her back to the school before I call the police and systematically destroy every aspect of your pathetic existence." "Ma'am, please, I'm so incredibly sorry, this was a complete accident." "I don't care about your excuses. I know exactly who you are, Marcus Chen, construction worker, divorced, behind on rent, barely keeping your head above water. It would take me one phone call to make sure you never work in this city again. Another call to ensure you lose custody of your own daughter permanently." Marcus's world tilted. How did she know all that? "Please ma'am, I would never hurt a child. I thought she was my Emma." 15 minutes. The school parking lot. "Come alone, or I promise you'll regret it for the rest of your very short, very miserable life." The line went dead. Marcus sat in stunned silence, rain pounding on his windshield like bullets. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely start the car. This woman, whoever she was, had resources. Power. She could end him with a phone call. "Don't worry, Sophie," he managed to say, his voice cracking. "We're taking you back to your mom right now." "It's okay, Mr. Marcus," Sophie said gently. "Mama gets really scared sometimes because of what happened before. She doesn't mean to be mean." "What happened before?" Marcus asked, but Sophie just shrugged, looking out the window at the storm. The drive back to school felt like driving to his own execution. Marcus's mind raced through worst-case scenarios. Jail time. Losing Emma forever. His face on the news as a child abductor. Everything he'd worked for, everything he'd sacrificed, gone because of one stupid mistake. Back at Riverside Elementary, Marcus saw her immediately. Victoria Martinez stood like a predator in the rain, designer clothes somehow still immaculate despite the storm. Even drenched, she looked like she'd stepped off the cover of Fortune magazine. Her dark eyes scanned every face with laser precision, and when they locked onto his car, Marcus felt like prey being marked for death. She was beautiful in the most terrifying way possible, the kind of woman who could buy and sell entire companies before lunch, who had probably crushed bigger men than him without breaking a perfectly manicured nail. The moment Sophie stepped out of the car, Victoria's entire demeanor transformed. The corporate ice queen vanished, replaced by a desperate mother who dropped to her knees in the muddy parking lot, pulling her daughter close with shaking hands. "Sophie, baby, are you okay? Did he touch you? Did he hurt you? Did he?" "Mama, breathe," Sophie said softly, patting her mother's face. "He was very nice to me. He gave me his jacket when I got cold and he told me funny stories about construction trucks." Victoria's eyes snapped to Marcus, who stood awkwardly by his car, drenched and terrified. Rain dripped from his work clothes and he probably looked exactly like what he was, a broke, desperate man in over his head. "You," she said, rising slowly to her full height. Even in the storm, she commanded the space around her. "Do you have any concept of what you've done? Do you understand the forces you've set in motion?" "Ma'am, I am so incredibly sorry," Marcus stammered. "I thought she was my daughter Emma. I would never intentionally." "Your daughter?" Victoria's expression shifted slightly, a crack appearing in her armor. "Where is she?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. In all the panic about taking the wrong child, he'd completely forgotten. Emma was still at school somewhere, probably scared and wondering why Daddy hadn't come for her. Oh God, she's still here somewhere," Marcus whispered, the full weight of his failure crushing down on him. Victoria studied his face for a long moment, then pulled out her phone. For a terrifying second, Marcus thought she was calling the police. Instead, she spoke rapidly in Spanish to someone, her voice crisp and commanding. "Find a little girl named Emma Chen," she switched to English. 6 years old, brown hair and pigtails, probably wearing a blue backpack with unicorns on it. She's scared and looking for her father. Bring her to the main parking lot immediately." She hung up and turned back to Marcus. "I have people." "Why are you helping me?" Marcus asked, completely confused. Victoria was quiet for a moment, studying him with those sharp, calculating eyes. "Sophie says you were kind to her. She's an excellent judge of character, better than most adults I know." She paused, rainwater running down her face. "Also, I know what it's like to lose a child even for a moment." Within minutes, 3 people appeared as if from nowhere, a woman in an expensive business suit and 2 men who looked like they could bench press a car. They scattered across the school grounds with military precision. "Who are you?" Marcus asked, beginning to understand that he'd stumbled into something much bigger than a simple mistake. "Victoria Martinez. Martinez Holdings, Martinez Foundation, Martinez Industries." She said it matter-of-factly, but Marcus felt his knees go weak. He'd heard that name. One of the wealthiest women in the state, maybe the country. And he'd accidentally kidnapped her daughter. They found Emma 10 minutes later, hiding behind the gymnasium and crying so hard she could barely breathe. The woman in the business suit gently coaxed her out, and the moment Emma saw Marcus, she ran into his arms like her life depended on it. "Daddy, I was so scared. I waited and waited where you always pick me up and then you were gone. I thought you left me like Mommy did." Marcus held his daughter tight, tears mixing with rainwater. Emma's words cut deeper than any knife. Sarah hadn't just left him, she'd abandoned Emma too, choosing her new life over her own child. "I'm so sorry, baby," Marcus whispered into Emma's wet hair. "Daddy made a terrible mistake, but I would never ever leave you. Never." Victoria watched the reunion with an unreadable expression. When Emma finally stopped crying, she noticed Sophie standing nearby. "Hi," Emma said shyly. "You have the same raincoat as me." "I know." Sophie grinned. "Mama says yellow is the color of sunshine." The 2 girls started chatting as if they'd known each other forever, comparing their matching raincoats and talking about their favorite colors. Marcus marveled at how quickly children could form connections, how easily they forgave and trusted. "Mr. Chin," Victoria said quietly, pulling him aside. "Your daughter is remarkably resilient. She was terrified, but she tried to find you on her own instead of giving up. That shows strength." "She gets that from her mother," Marcus said automatically, then caught himself. "Her real mother. Not the one who walked away." Victoria's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Walk with me." They moved a few steps away from the children, who were now discussing whether unicorns or dragons were cooler. Victoria's security team maintained a discreet perimeter, professional and invisible. "I owe you an explanation," Victoria said. "And probably an apology." Marcus blinked in surprise. "You owe me an apology?" I kidnapped your daughter. You made an innocent mistake that could have happened to any parent in that chaos. Victoria gestured toward the school, where dozens of cars were still circling in the storm, parents and children running through the rain. But my reaction, that wasn't about you. She was quiet for a long moment, watching Sophie show Emma how to make raindrops dance on her hand. 3 years ago, someone took Sophie from this school. Not by accident, intentionally. Right from the playground while I was in a board meeting, too focused on closing a deal to pick up my own daughter. Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. Jesus. We found her after 4 days. For days of not knowing if she was alive, if she was hurt, if I'd ever see her again. Victoria's voice remained steady, but Marcus could see her hands trembling slightly. The man who took her, he wasn't a confused parent making an honest mistake. He wasn't gentle or kind. He was a monster who thought he could ransom my daughter for money. I'm so sorry, Marcus whispered, finally understanding the fear he'd seen in her eyes. When you called and I heard Sophie's voice in the background, when I realized she was with a stranger. Victoria shook her head. Every nightmare came flooding back. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was just a terrified mother reacting to her worst fear. But you still helped me find Emma. Because Sophie told me you were different. She said you seemed like a good daddy, that you were worried about your own little girl. She has good instincts about people, better than mine sometimes. Emma tugged on Marcus's wet jacket. Daddy, Sophie says her house has horses. Real horses. Can we see them? Victoria smiled, the first genuine warm smile Marcus had seen from her. We'll see, sweetheart. Maybe soon. As they prepared to part ways, Victoria handed Marcus a business card. Martinez Foundation. We help single parents who are struggling with exactly the kinds of challenges you're facing. Marcus stared at the elegant card, not quite believing what he was hearing. I don't understand. I've been looking for a project manager for our family assistance programs. Someone who understands what it means to juggle impossible demands, to put your child first even when the world is falling apart around you. Victoria's voice was businesslike again, but there was warmth underneath. The pay is substantially more than you're making now, full benefits, flexible hours so you can be there for Emma when she needs you. You're offering me a job? Marcus felt like he was dreaming. After what happened today? Because of what happened today. You made a mistake, but how you handled it showed character. You could have panicked, could have been rough with Sophie, could have made everything worse. Instead, you were gentle with a scared little girl who wasn't even your own daughter. Marcus looked at Emma, who was deep in conversation with Sophie about the relative merits of different horse breeds. I still don't understand why you'd want to help me. Victoria followed his gaze to the two girls. Because single parents need to look out for each other. Because kindness should be rewarded, not punished. And because... She paused, her corporate mask slipping again. Sophie hasn't laughed like that since the kidnapping. If you can give her the gift of friendship, then I want to give you the gift of stability. What if I mess up again? What if I'm not qualified? Everyone messes up, Mr. Chin. The measure of a person isn't whether they make mistakes, it's what they do afterward. Victoria tucked her business card into his pocket. Take the weekend to think about it. But don't overthink it. Sometimes the best opportunities come disguised as disasters. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep clutching a drawing Sophie had made for her, Marcus sat at his kitchen table staring at Victoria's business card. He researched the Martinez Foundation online, discovering it was one of the most respected charitable organizations in the country, providing everything from emergency assistance to job training to childcare for struggling families. The salary Victoria had mentioned would solve every financial problem he had. He could move Emma to a better apartment, maybe even a house with a yard. He could stop working double shifts and actually be present for his daughter's childhood. He could breathe again. But was it real? Or was this some elaborate setup, a rich woman's twisted idea of revenge? His phone rang. Unknown number again. His heart jumped into his throat. Mr. Chin? This is Victoria Martinez. Mrs. Martinez, hi, I wanted to apologize again for this afternoon. I was scared and I handled it badly. You didn't deserve to be threatened. Marcus was quiet for a moment. I kidnapped your daughter. Accidentally, but still. You made a mistake that any parent could have made in that chaos. The difference is what kind of person you are when the mistake happens. Victoria's voice was soft, tired. Sophie hasn't stopped talking about Emma. About how nice you were, how you told her funny stories to keep her from being scared. She's a special kid. They both are. Yes, they are. Mr. Chin, I meant what I said about the job. I've spent 3 years building walls around Sophie and myself, thinking that would keep us safe. But watching her with Emma today, seeing her trust someone new, laugh without fear, I realized I've been protecting her from the wrong things. What do you mean? I was protecting her from connection, from friendship, from joy. The very things that make life worth living. Victoria paused. Your mistake today wasn't really a mistake, was it? It was exactly what we both needed. 2 weeks later, Marcus started his new position as Family Program Manager at the Martinez Foundation. The work was everything Victoria had promised, challenging but meaningful, helping families navigate the same struggles he knew so well. His first case was a single mother whose ex-husband had stopped paying child support. His second was a father who'd lost his job and was facing eviction. Victoria was demanding but fair, expecting excellence while understanding that life happened. When Emma got sick with the flu, Victoria sent Marcus home without question. When his car broke down, she arranged for emergency transportation assistance through the foundation's programs. Emma and Sophie became inseparable, their friendship growing stronger each day. Emma's grades improved dramatically, her confidence returning as she found stability and security. Sophie started taking riding lessons and convinced Emma to join her, both girls developing a shared love of horses that led to weekend adventures at Victoria's estate. One evening, 3 months after that rainy afternoon, Marcus was reviewing case files in his new office when Victoria knocked on his door. "How are you settling in?" she asked, settling into the chair across from his desk. "It still doesn't feel real sometimes," Marcus admitted. 6 months ago, I was one missed paycheck away from losing everything. Now Emma has her own horse to ride, we have a house with a yard, and I'm actually helping other families instead of just barely surviving myself. You earned every bit of it. Your work here has been exceptional." Victoria smiled. "But that's not why I stopped by." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Sophie wants to have a sleepover this weekend. Both girls have been planning it for weeks apparently. Something about building the world's largest blanket fort and staying up all night telling ghost stories. Emma mentioned something about that. Are you sure you're ready for that level of chaos?" Victoria laughed, and Marcus marveled again at how different she was from the terrifying woman he'd first met in the parking lot. "Bring it on. After what we've been through, 2 giggling 6-year-olds don't scare me anymore." As Marcus packed up to leave that evening, he found himself thinking about the chain of events that had brought him here. One moment of confusion in a storm had transformed 2 families, creating connections that might never have existed otherwise. He picked up Emma from after-school care, something he could afford now thanks to his new salary, and listened to her chatter excitedly about the upcoming sleepover, about Sophie's new foal, about the art project they were planning together. "Daddy," Emma said as they pulled into their driveway, "are you happy now?" The question caught him off guard. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "Before, when we lived in the little apartment, you were always worried. Always sad. But now you smile more. Are you happy?" Marcus looked at his daughter, really looked at her. Her eyes were bright again, her laughter came easily, her shoulders weren't hunched with the weight of worries no child should carry. She was thriving in ways he'd hardly dared to hope for. "Yes, baby," he said, meaning it completely. "I'm very happy. Are you?" "The happiest ever. Even happier than before Mommy went away because now I know you'll never leave me. And I have Sophie, and Mrs. Victoria is teaching me to braid horse manis, and you don't cry in the bathroom anymore when you think I'm not listening." Marcus felt his eyes fill with tears, good tears this time. "I love you so much, Emma. I love you too, Daddy. And I love our new life." That weekend, as Marcus watched Emma and Sophie construct an elaborate blanket fort in Victoria's living room, he reflected on how dramatically everything had changed. The kidnapping that had terrified him had become the foundation of the most important friendship in both girls' lives. The mistake that could have destroyed him had become the beginning of a new chapter filled with purpose and security. Victoria found him on the back porch, watching the girls through the window as they arranged stuffed animals for their tea party. "Penny, for your thoughts?" she asked, settling beside him on the porch swing. "Just thinking about that day. How something so wrong turned into something so right." "You know what I think?" Victoria said, accepting a cup of coffee from Maria, her housekeeper. "I think sometimes the universe puts us exactly where we need to be, even if it doesn't look like it at the time. Even when it's terrifying? Especially then. The best things in life usually come disguised as our worst fears." Victoria smiled, watching Sophie show Emma how to pour pretend tea without spilling. "I spent 3 years after the kidnapping afraid to let Sophie out of my sight, afraid to trust anyone, afraid to let her form connections that might hurt her. I thought I was protecting her, but I was actually limiting her world. And now, Now I see her laughing with genuine joy for the first time in years. I see her being brave enough to make a real friend, to trust someone new. You and Emma gave her that gift. Marcus was quiet for a moment. You gave us everything. A new life, financial security, purpose. How do we ever repay that? You already have. Every day Sophie comes home from school talking about Emma. Every time I see her confidence growing, every moment she acts like a normal, happy 6-year-old instead of a scared survivor. That's how you repay it. The girls burst through the porch door, dragging blankets and pillows. We're moving the fort outside, Sophie announced. We want to sleep under the stars. It's going to be the best sleepover ever, Emma added, her eyes shining with excitement. As they helped set up the outdoor fort, complete with battery-powered fairy lights and enough snacks to feed a small army, Marcus caught Victoria's eye over the girls' heads. She nodded slightly, both of them understanding that they were witnessing something precious: childhood joy, unfettered by fear or limitation. Later that night, long after the girls had finally fallen asleep in their blanket fort, Marcus and Victoria sat on the porch talking about everything and nothing. About their hopes for their daughters, about the work they were doing at the foundation, about how strange it was that a single moment of panic had led to such profound changes. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't made that mistake? Marcus asked. Victoria considered the question. We probably never would have met. Sophie might have spent years more trapped by fear. Emma might have grown up thinking she wasn't worth fighting for. You might have worked yourself to death trying to provide for her alone. And you? I would have stayed locked in my ivory tower, convinced that isolation was safety, that walls were stronger than bridges. Victoria looked out at the sleeping girls. I would have missed this. All of this. Marcus nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. The friendship between their daughters had created something neither of them had expected. A chosen family, a support system, a reminder that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. As he drove home the next morning with a sleepy Emma curled up in the back seat, clutching a friendship bracelet Sophie had made for her, Marcus realized that the story he would tell about that rainy afternoon had completely changed. It was no longer a story about a terrible mistake that almost ruined everything. It was a story about how sometimes you have to take the wrong path to find the right destination. How sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what really matters. How sometimes the scariest moments lead to the most beautiful transformations. And most importantly, it was a story about how kindness, even in the face of fear, even when it's risky, even when it doesn't make logical sense, has the power to change everything. The rain that had seemed so threatening that day now seemed like a blessing, washing away old fears and old limitations, making space for new beginnings and unexpected joy. Emma stirred in her car seat as they pulled into their driveway. Daddy, can Sophie come over next weekend? I want to show her my room and teach her how to make paper airplanes. Of course, sweetheart. I think Mrs. Victoria and I have a lot more planning to do. As Marcus carried his sleeping daughter into their house, their real house, with a yard and stability and hope, he whispered a quiet thank you to whatever forces had conspired to put him in that school parking lot on that rainy day, looking for the wrong child but finding exactly the right future.